This video is going to serve as a brief introduction to the Python library known as Adventure Library or Adventure Lib. So, first thing we're going to need to do is from Adventure Lib, import everything. If you haven't installed Adventure Lib, you can open up your PowerShell or command prompt, pip install Adventure Lib. If you're at school, you'll need to type -- user at the end of that, and that will allow you to bypass the administrator requirements that's been set up by the school admin. So we've got from Adventure Lib import star. Now what Adventure Library does is it's essentially a simple library with only a few functions and classes within it that allow you to easily create adventure games, so text adventure games. It includes a simple text parser that, well, it doesn't include the text parser, but it includes essentially what is an endless loop that gets the user text, and then you can manipulate that text and work with what they're saying. It includes a class called room, a class called item, and a class called bag. And in this video, we're going to look firstly at the class called room. So room is a class. Now a class is a description of a concept. It's a description of an object in Python, but when we think of objects, we tend to think of physical things. But in an object-oriented programming language, an object is an instance that exists in the computer's memory of a concept or description. It's quite abstract, and what we have is a class called room. So when we think of a room, we think of the room that we're in, 4 walls, a door. A room in Python has a description, it has a list of exits, and it also has a function that tells us what the exits are. So we're going to define a room simply. So we're going to call this, I'm just going to call it start room equals room. Now when we define a room, we should give it a description. This is the start room. Now a better description would be suitable if I had if I wasn't doing a demonstration here. I could write a whole lot of stuff. You were standing by a white letterbox in a field, etc. That's from Zork, by the way. But this is the start room. So what we've got here is start room is a room. It's an instance of the room class. When we create a room, we send its description to it. It automatically gets a list of exits added to it, and all rooms have the exits function. So if we were to type start room dot exits, that's going to give us a list of all the exits. Currently there's none. So we can define another room. I'll go end room, that'll do. End room equals room. This is the end room. Okay, now what we can do is we can make a connection between these rooms. We can go start room dot north. North, the cardinal directions are already built in to rooms. So by default it doesn't exist. Well, there's no direction, there's no room attached to it, but we can add it. So start room dot north equals end room. We do not need to add the corresponding direction back. It will work. So what we've done here is we've created a start room, we've created an end room, and we've connected the two things together. Now let's say we wanted to have something else in this room that shows up maybe when we visit it for the first time. So we might just keep track of how many times we visit it. So we want this to be in every single room. And before we define any rooms, we can add something to the room. So we can add room.visited equals 0. Every single room will now have a .visited variable unique to it. If we add it after we define the rooms, then they will all share it. It's quite an abstract concept. And I'm not going to get into classes, it's not required at level 2, so I'm going to keep it fairly simple. So room.visited equals 0. So what we've got here, room.visited equals 0, start room, end room. We've connected the rooms together. What we're going to do now is start Adventure Library. Now I'm in the folder where I've saved this, so I can run it by typing python game.py, that's what I've called it, game.py. And it loads up Adventure Lib, and I can type things. Now this start function is part of Adventure Library, and it essentially puts us in an endless loop with a little chevron here that allows us to type things in. Go north. I don't understand go north. It doesn't understand anything because we haven't actually told it what to do. So there's quite a bit going on here, but the first thing I want us to look at is just creating rooms and creating connections between the rooms. Notice that it doesn't just take care of everything for us. We've got to still determine what happens when we type things in, which we'll get to shortly. Now we also want to define different directions. So we can use room.add directions. It might be add directions, I'll check. And I'm going to add the directions up and down. Now if you've looked in the docs for this, you will find that the docs for this, or the documentation for Adventure Library, says you can put things like enter and exit. You can't do that in Windows. Exit will not actually work. So I'm just going to run this again now that I've saved it and make sure it has no add. Okay, so it must be add direction. No, maybe it's add underscore direction. Okay, alright. So it looks like add direction was the right thing. And what I can do is now I could define like a room above start room. So start room.up equals something else. So I will do that. In here, we'll go above room equals room. This room is above start room. Okay, and then we can add in our directions here. Start room.up equals above room. Now it'd be a good idea at this stage to actually start putting in some comments so we know what things are. Room modifications. Room definitions. Room connections. There's no rule that says you have to put these in like this. It's just it makes sense to, because you can't connect. Like I couldn't go, I couldn't put start room dot north equals end room because end room doesn't exist in the code until here. So generally what I would do is I would define any room modifications at the top, any room definitions below that, and then connect the rooms up after that. So we've got some code here, but we're going to take care of what happens when the user types stuff in. So that's the next thing. We're going to put in, I'll put that in the next video actually. We'll have a look at that in the next video.